Now, let me tell you something. That man would never work for me. Never. That man would not cause the ruckus he caused and ever work for me. But he works for our sheriff now. Our sheriff kept him. That's the standard our sheriff is willing to accept, because that's the standard that man did. We all admit that that's what he did. And he works in a position that is critical to public trust, that is critical to maintaining evidence against those that have been alleged, to have committed a crime. And that is someone that is actively investigating crimes in our county. That type of behavior, that type of predisposition to, flinging off the handle. Again, this was at a child's sporting event. Low stakes, low stress. And this is his behavior choice at this game. And again, not just the screaming and the yelling, but the sitting on the car like he owned the street, just sitting there, crossed arms, staring down people. Yeah, this is still on the payroll, y'all. Still on the payroll. So was I thrilled when I got this letter and saw that he's received disciplinary action and not what I expected to be, because again, we've had sheriffs that fire people because their family's running. Our current sheriff has fired people for things much less than this situation right here. We trust and believe. Got facts on that. So was I disappointed that he made the choice to keep him? I sure was. But again, I'm not signing those checks. It's not my name on the deputy's patrol car. It's not my reputation. He wouldn't work for me. But if that's the standard you want to keep, right? If that's what's acceptable to you, if that's what I as a citizen am here to expect from the Beaufort County Sheriff's Department under the current sheriff's leadership, then that's just something that's good for me to know, right? And last we heard then was, because again, there was some kind of call or a meeting after we got this letter. And the sheriff told my husband, hey, he's going to be working in the jail. So at this time, I'm actively practicing law. And I don't go to court every day, but I go to court, more than I normally, did before when I did transactional law or, magistrate. I went like once a month. So, and I was presiding over it. But, as an attorney, I went and did cases every once in a while. Well, wouldn't you know, I go in and the old deputy from the softball field, he's not working in the jail. He's working as a bailiff. So I had a case in district court, and I go in, and again, I've told y'all, attorneys, we, have a badge. We just show it. We don't have to wait in the security line. We got our little, briefcases or whatever, and your case files, and you go in, and in the courtroom that I was going in, it was on that main floor. It's technically the second floor, but I guess the first floor, the basement is, the basement and then the first floor when you first enter, and then there's, Superior Court's upstairs. So I go into district court, and there is an attorney, conference room off to the side, and then the main courtroom. And I go in, and as I turn the corner to go into the room, there's that deputy and another deputy standing outside of the courtroom. And I had a full trauma, response. I started shaking. My hands were sweating. I couldn't catch my breath. I went into a full panic attack. Because again, I'm expecting him to be down in the jail, not waiting for my, my client's case out in the front where I'm going to be in district court. And I was really in a bad way, because it caught me totally off guard. And he could tell. And he, because we made eye contact. And he sees, I mean, I kind of like do a breath like this. Because the last time I saw him, he's got this cock right here. And it's sitting on top of the patrol car. And so I end up just trying to I go to the bathroom, try to get myself together. And I can't get myself together. So I know court's, we're fixing, the judge isn't there yet, but he's going to be out there. So I go back to the judge. And because then, the sheriff's deputy, he walks from the outside of the courtroom into where court is. And he stands up there like this, like glaring at me again. And I'm just thinking to myself, oh my God, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get myself together to go advocate for my client? I can't, I'm having a trauma response and I'm about to help someone that's going through something traumatic. This is going to be a mess. So I go back to the judge's chambers and I got that letter on me because, I'm always going to have a screenshot, uh, a photo. That's who I am inside and out. And I show the judge and I'm shaking and the clerk is there and I'm like, there was a whole situation not even 2 months ago. I don't think I can, I can stand it to be around him. And I don't know what to do. And listen, there's not a lot of stuff that I can say that I'm impressed with the majority of our district court judges, with the exception of one that is a female judge. And but to his credit, this other gentleman that wasn't necessarily my favorite judge, he looked at me and he said, "This is my courtroom, and if he even looks at you sideways, I will kick him out. Deputy or no deputy, bailiff or no bailiff, this is my courtroom." Because he looked at the letter and he was like, don't you dare worry about it. And I'm like, weepy, crying, like trying to get myself calmed down. He said, "You take as long as you need. When you're ready, you go out there and then I'm gonna come out and we're gonna start court and we're gonna get you out of here." And he's in there, sneering and snickering and turning all red, big cheeks turning red. And, you can tell he's loving it. Because anyone can tell I'm bothered, right? Now, luckily, I basically had some motions to file and then was able to roll. But, we contacted the sheriff and we said, "Hey, look, I practice law. I can't have, please, can you just, I get it. Maybe he's a bailiff. Maybe he doesn't work in the jail. Maybe we got that confused. Or you needed to move him, whatever. Can it please be the days that, I have court? Can he not be in that courtroom?" I'm not saying don't be in the courthouse. I'm not trying to, dictate where he goes because he's very sensitive to that. Don't let nobody going to tell him where to go. But if someone could please, just trade out bailiffs for a minute while I have to do my stuff. Because I've had a real, panic attack over this. Well, the sheriff says, "Of course, no problem. No problem. That won't be a problem at all." Do you know every single time I went to court until I stopped practicing private practice, he was there in my courtroom every single time. And I would ask other attorneys in our firm if he was there. And he would, every single time that my firm was up there. And we weren't litigators, okay? This was a non-profit, private, sliding scale firm that had its foundational work was in domestic violent victim advocacy, right? It expanded into some other practice areas, but that was the meat and potatoes of the work that we did. And every single time he was there, smirking, laughing, looking all smugly pugly. Now, if it was me, right, and I was a person that had, actively had a conflict, right, and he's supposedly received disciplinary procedure. So I'm guessing he got some form of the letter that I got from his boss, the sheriff, saying that he was found to be unethical and, conduct unbecoming of an officer, basically. So, he's knows what the deal is. And you would think if he had any kind of sense about him, he'd be like, hey, I'm not trying to be in the room with her. I mean, I don't want it to be like there's a big problem and I'm making it worse and trying to use my power and intimidate someone or, harass them or anything. So, hey, buddy, will you tap in for me to be the bailiff, and I'll go up to Superior Court, or I'll go down to, do Magistrate's Court, whatever. But yeah, I'd like to opt out of this case, at least until she leaves. Maybe not all day, but just until her case is over with, right? No. No, not big power, buddy. Not the kind of people that sit on top of a patrol car. Not the kind of people that cause a scene at a softball game, a 8U softball girls game, right? No, they're built different. They're built different. They love the fact that, it was bothersome. They love the fact that they were in a position of power with a gun. Bailiff's got a gun on him, standing there smugly pugly. Yeah. He was loving it. And we'd contacted the sheriff, and to no avail. Now, my suspicion and what my theory is and my opinion is that it was done intentionally. And I'm not saying it was done by the sheriff intentionally, but I'm saying it was done by the deputy intentionally. And the sheriff at a minimum knew about it and did nothing to stop it. But the thing that I'm concerned about now, because again, this sheriff is an incumbent, he's running for sheriff again for a re-election, is that he is willing to keep in his employ that type of officer. That someone that acts like that in your own county is someone you're willing to keep on the payroll. That says a lot about the sheriff. And it says pretty much everything I need to know about the sheriff to not get my confidence and to not get my vote. There are enough challenges in this world for law enforcement officers to have to deal with. Fighting the reputation of the behavior that was that deputy's actions is something they don't need to do. That gives them all a bad rap. And to be honest with you, if anybody has been harmed or their evidence tampered with, I think you have to go to someone that has ethics findings on their personnel record to be like, this is questionable. This is sussy, right? Right. Because for me, my concern as a citizen is if he was willing to do that type of behavior in front of all those people, right? Screaming and fussing and getting in people's faces. What's he gonna do when no one's around? If that's his ethical behavior or unethical behavior, and that's his conduct choice in front of hundreds of people, what type of choices is he making when there's only one person around? And maybe that person isn't very credible, right? Maybe that person hasn't always made the right choices in life. And here we are, a person that hasn't made the right choices in life with a person that through, most circumstances is believable, right? A position of power and trust, law enforcement. Makes you wonder. So I know you might be thinking like, well, why did you sit on this for so long? It's 3 years ago. Why are we, no, well, not quite 3 years yet, but, basically 3 years ago. Why are we talking about it now? Well, the truth is, like I've said on other stories, for 18 years, I've kept my mouth shut, honey. I just smiled and stayed silent, trying to be positive, trying to not make any waves, don't want to be controversial, don't want to get anybody upset, right? And the reality is, I had voiced my concern to the person that matters, the sheriff. The sheriff has the authority to fire this person at any point, right? And they didn't. So they already told me it wasn't going to change. And the more I rocked the boat, the more I was concerned with I might get messed with in another phase of my life, right? Like all of a sudden then maybe people are, not looking out for us or trying to do something else that's shady against us. And I wasn't trying to mess with, anybody. I mean, his own boss, again, said he acted unethically. So, I'm not trying to poke the bear too much. But the reality is, here we are, up for re-election. And I've kind of picked up a little bit of a platform. People are listening to the sassy attorney. And I want people to know, this is the truth. The current sheriff is willing to accept this type of behavior and keep it on the payroll. And that's not going to work for me as a voter. It's not. It's not. There are too many good people out there that he doesn't have to settle for this. And I can't explain why he decided to keep him. That's a question only the sheriff can answer. I think it's a hard thing to answer as to why you're willing to accept an unethical individual who now, again, is back to investigating crimes. He doesn't work as a bailiff anymore. That only lasted about, 6 months, 7 months. I don't know. Get the information from the sheriff exactly. There was a post that they did on a thank you post for law enforcement officers about a year later. And he was up there with an investigator polo saying, like, oh, we love our, law enforcement officers, right? At one of the schools with the investigator polo in the Beaufort County Sheriff's Department. So at some point he left the bailiff's division and he went back to being an investigator. So collecting evidence, investigating crimes, swearing to warrants, all of that. As someone who a year ago was found to be unethical and having conduct, basically unprofessional conduct. So only the sheriff can answer as to how someone, got to that place. But as a voter, I'm gonna voice my dissent in with my ballot. And truth be told, there are some other things that our sheriff, the current sheriff, has done that I could never vote for him again. And we're going to talk about some of those other things here. I'm going to do another story. We got these amnesty boxes that really need to be unpacked, like how that was ever even. It's crazy to think about what he wanted done with those amnesty boxes. But we got some stories about a four-wheeler situation that's, involving the sheriff himself that I think needs to be told to a broader audience. So there's some documentation on that one that he's probably praying don't come out. But guess what, honey? She coming out. Now listen, I want to be very, very clear about this next statement. There are people who work at the Beaufort County Sheriff's Department that are, we need to be on our knees thanking God every day that they are out on these streets protecting us, that they are investigating crimes, that they are keeping us safe. There are some phenomenal law enforcement officers and public servants that work in the sheriff's office. And they worked there before the current sheriff got here. And some of them started working under him, once he took office. So I will give credit where credit is due. The sheriff has some phenomenal officers or law enforcement officers on his payroll. I will say that. But this particular one is not it. No. Yeah, but I'm not impressed with the, the work product that has been out of the sheriff's office from the leadership himself. And so I'm not going to renew that with my vote personally. Y'all do what you want, but this is me.